Hi, I'm George Norrie, and welcome to our Coast to Coast AM YouTube channel. Have fun, tell your friends, and share us with everyone. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Coast to Coast AM's mobile app. And always remember to log on to our website at coasttocoastam.com for daily articles, the best paranormal information, and all you need to know about your favorite guests. And now you can become a Coast Insider directly through the Coast mobile app. We welcome our international listeners and even offer a free 2-week trial. So don't delay. Become an insider today. And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with you. Jim Barfield back with us. Jim is the director of the Copper Scroll Project. Now, his personal interest in Bible study led him to the Dead Sea Scrolls, where he came across the least understandable scroll of all. It's called the Copper Scroll. It describes gold, silver, gems, and temple artifacts, which upon discovery will signal the coming of end times. Jim is a retired criminal investigator, multiple career positions. After his retirement in 2005, he founded the Copper Scroll Project and began traveling to Israel to confirm his research on the ancient documents and development relationships with the Israeli government and civil leaders to conduct an excavation of the ruins of Qumran to discover the 57 potential hoards of temple treasures that are buried under the national park. Jim, welcome back. How you been? It's been a while.
It has been a while. How are you, Mr. Norrie?
Everything is good. And how's the project coming along?
Well, the pandemic really put the brakes on things. We've actually been out of business for about, I guess a little over a year and a half now. We've still been doing some projects and speaking in a lot of places, but actually getting back to Israel, it's put a stop to that. The Israelis are really strict about the COVID-19 stuff, so we are getting ready to go back over, hopefully in January.
How did you get involved in this project in the first place, Jim?
It's just like you said in your introduction. It was Bible study. Sounds crazy, and it sounds incredibly far-fetched, but it really was. It was my Bible study. I got to studying, and I realized that, in 30 A.D., there were three main groups. There were the Sadducees, Pharisees, and the Essenes. But the New Testament appeared never to mention the Essenes, and since Jesus opposed the other two groups, Pharisees and Sadducees, I focused on the Essenes. And all the ancient historians, Philo, Pliny, Josephus, really spoke highly of the Essenes. So I started studying those guys. And, George, it was just incredible how much the Essenes were praised by these men. And then I started getting deeper into it. And the amazing similarities turned into really undeniable parallels in teachings, religious practices, financial observations, material ownership rules, and time requirements for the promotions within the group of the Essenes that matched the group, the disciples of the groups of John the Baptist and Jesus exactly. And that's why I got to studying into it. And the more I studied into it, I got to the books about the community rule and that sort of thing. And I realized that their names, even the names, the titles of the groups that Jesus and John the Baptist were with, the poor, the sons of light, the way, the brethren, the many, the lot of Melchizedek, which is better known as the Melchizedek order, they were all the same names that they were using in the Bible for the disciples and the men that Jesus and John the Baptist were working with. Even the book of Hebrews, there's a lot of details about the order in there that actually says that Jesus was of the lot of Melchizedek, or the order of Melchizedek order.
You've done your homework, Jimmy.
Oh gosh, it's been amazing. And you know what? I'm going to be honest with you. When I first got to Israel and I sat down with the director general for the Antiquities Authority, the guy thought I was a nut. And, I understood. Here's a guy from Oklahoma going to Israel, sitting down with the head of the Antiquities Authority and his wife. They had invited me to a room, or not a room, but a kind of a parlor at the Citadel Hotel in downtown Jerusalem. But you know what? After about 5 minutes of talking to the guy, he just loved it. And he grabbed his phone, and I thought he was angry at first. He grabbed his phone out of his bag, and he called and set up a meeting between me and Yitzhak Magen and Yuval Peleg. Yuval Peleg was actually the archaeologist that worked at Qumran. He loved it. And he and I had some more meetings, and that's how the things really began to happen.
And when we last talked, which was about 4 years ago, has anything changed over the past 4 years in terms of information?
Yeah, there has been. There's been more information about. Let me give you an example. There's in the Copper Scroll, it talks about a location called the Cliff of Judgment. In that Cliff of Judgment, or that story about the Cliff of Judgment, I began to study details around Qumran and around the surrounding cliffs. Well, there was a place called in the Talmud. It's called the Zuk. That's the place where the Israelis would stand with the priest or the man that escorted the goat, the Azazel goat, out to the cliff and would push him off of the cliff. And oh my goodness, when I got to doing the study on it, I pulled up a because I wasn't in Israel at the time. I pulled up the Google Earth, and as I zoomed in on the spot that I thought might be the place where they pushed the goat off the cliff, because when they talked about it, it said that the goat would fall so far that it would literally destroy the goat before it ever hit the ground at the other end. It tore to bits. It sounds horrible, but that's what happened. And the cliffs around Qumran, I kind of thought initially that was going to be the place where they pushed the goat off. It would kill the goat, but it wouldn't have done that much damage to it. So I went to another place that's about a mile away, and I zoomed in on it, and oh my goodness, there's a perfect spot there where they could see, they could actually see Qumran from there, and the people at Qumran could see the events taking place with the goat. Did I talk to you about a stone that set out at the south end of the Qumran complex?
I can't recall. I don't think so.
That's what I thought. There is a stone. It's probably 2 feet wide, 2.5 feet long, and 2.5 feet tall. They talk about in the Talmud, that which is like a major dictionary for Jewish information. They have debates in there and that sort of thing. And where they discuss it in what is called Yoma. It means the day, like the Day of Atonement information. And they said that they took a ribbon out to this location near Qumran where they would push it off, and I measured it. Based on the information from the Talmud, I measured it, and it was exactly the right distance. And I thought, well, maybe this is the place. So I kept studying it, kept looking at it, and I literally measured it out by the feet, because with Google Earth you can do that. You can measure the feet, miles, everything. What I found was this. That spot matched it exactly, and in the Talmud it said that they took a piece of the ribbon, tied it to the door of the temple. It's a red ribbon. And then they took another piece the day before, and they went out to a place where they observed it, and they tied it to a rock. I'm going to tell you that rock has got to be the spot, because it's a perfect place to locate yourself to see what's happening. And it's got a hole bored in it where you could set a block of wood to tie the ribbon to. And then the other piece of the ribbon, of course, went with the goat. Now, this sounds crazy, but guys, I'm telling you, it's true. They would push the goat off, and if God forgave the sins of Israel, then the ribbon would turn white. And that's exactly what happened. It was amazing. So anyway, I've shown my research to some Israelis, and there's a gentleman in the United States that I showed it to. He is a expert. He's an expert on all the things that pertain to the temple, and he said, "Yeah, this, my goodness, this makes so much more sense than where they say that this actually took place at."
Jim, I'd like you to describe for folks the Dead Sea Scrolls. Then we'll get into the Copper Scroll, of course.
These scrolls were actually the place where they found all these. It's called a Genizah. In Hebrew, it's a place for storing old documents. Well, they would store them in these Genizahs because they've got the name of God on them. And if anything that has the name of God on it, they want to make sure that it's protected because they hold the name of God in such high esteem.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all these books, scrolls begin to get collected inside of these caves, which they used as Genizahs, storage places.
Were they in little clay vases?
Well, no, they're not little. They were actually pretty big. They're about 2.5 feet tall. They got a clay lid, and they're about, I'm going to say about a foot in diameter.
And there's one scroll per vase?
No, there's usually a couple of scrolls.
Couple of them.
You would be surprised how tiny, whenever they print these scrolls, I would have to use my glasses and a magnifying glass to be able to read them. They're just tiny little letters, and so they could because the scrolls were difficult to make. They were made out of lamb skin, goat skin, ibex skins, and they would write on them. They would line it out. They would cut it, and then they'd sew each section of the lambskin together to make a scroll.
And they rolled them up.
Yes, they did. They rolled them up just like it sounds into a scroll. Usually two-sided. They'd roll it out on one side and then spin it and turn it and be able to find the locations that they wanted within the Bible.
How many scrolls were there hidden away there in the cave?
Every book of the Bible, except the New Testament, for what they call the Torah, the writings, and the prophets. All the books were found, including the books of Enoch, the book of Jubilees. The only one that wasn't found was the book of Esther. It hadn't been found in there. Maybe it will be. I don't know, but that's the only one that was not there. But it's the books about this sect, about the Essenes, their secular practices that are the most fascinating, and those are the ones that drew me to them because they explain so much about. I absolutely believe that John the Baptist and Jesus were both associated with, very strongly associated with the Essenes at Qumran.
Who are the ones who apparently wrote the scrolls, right?
Yes. Yeah, I don't know how a lot of these experts don't recognize these things with the Essenes. There's so many matching details about the Essenes, it's impossible not to recognize it. Sometimes it's almost like they don't want people to realize and see what's there. There's actually was a time that I was listening to the radio, and they were talking about a discovery at Qumran. They had found a grave that was made, and the casket was covered with mica. And they said it was obviously a very important individual. The next day, I've never heard anything about it since then. Who could that have possibly been? I don't know. Personally, I think it could have been Jeremiah or Ezekiel, any one of the prophets.
Over what period of time, Jim, do you think the scrolls were made? A couple of years, 3 years, 4 years? How long do you think it took?
To make one scroll?
To make all of them.
Oh, gosh. You're talking hundreds of years.
Really?
Because, yeah, oh, gosh, yeah, because the Essenes didn't pop up overnight. I absolutely believe that they are the group that Samuel, he had a school of prophets, and Their studies were done out there, dating studies of Qumran in the buildings, and Roland DeBow actually just thought that was the location where the Essenes had a college. So yeah, it was years because they would write a scroll, and then another prophet would pop up. Let's say Samuel, for example. Samuel would write his scrolls there, and of course they would copy them. And they had a scriptorium within the ruins of Qumran. It was a long building, so they could stretch the scrolls out. They had long tables that they would put the scrolls on, and they could write and recopy the scrolls. And that's why it's so hard to date them, other than if they do carbon dating.
Does it look like one person may have been responsible for a number of scrolls over a certain amount of years, and then maybe that person died and somebody else came in?
Yeah, and they base that primarily on, just like they do handwriting analysis. They look at it, and it's like with the Copper Scroll. You can see 5 different handwritings on the Copper Scroll. So, yes, I do believe that one guy would, serve his time as the
scribe.
Thank you, scribe, and then another gentleman would step up and take the job, because you had to have some skill to be able to write that tiny and make it legible. And then you have to think about, have you ever heard of I can't think of it. Mezuzah. They put it on the doors. You ever heard of those things?
I have not, no.
They're a scroll from out of Deuteronomy, and they're tiny little scrolls, but they've got an entire section of Deuteronomy written on it. Well, they found one of them at Qumran, one of these scrolls that fit inside of a mezuzah. In the Bible, it says, you shall put these on the doorpost of your house, and you will read about them when you rise up, when you go to bed, that sort of thing. Well, they literally put them on their doorposts. And those tiny little scrolls, they found one of them, and they had to have taken a hair, dipped it in the ink, and wrote the scroll. That's how tiny they were.
That's amazing.
These guys were skilled.
Do you think the scrolls were dictated, Jim, or simply written out?
I think they were dictated initially. I'm sure they were. Because, for example, Jeremiah had his own scribe.
Who came along with him.
Yeah, they had their own scribe. Jeremiah's was Baruch. They would he would sit down with him, and they'd write these scrolls out. And Baruch even had some of his own writings are in the Dead Sea Scrolls.
So basically, the scrolls are the Bible.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, Qumran, I don't know if I told you the last time I talked to you, but Qumran, I was doing a study, and I was trying to determine some information about Qumran. So I was looking for a map of Jerusalem at the time of Jeremiah. Did I tell you about this?
No.
Well, I found a map of Jerusalem, only I didn't recognize it. Of course, it was written at the time of Jeremiah. And matter of fact, when I saw it, I thought it was a map of Jerusalem, of Qumran, upside down. And I thought, my goodness, why would this guy, whoever this was on the website, why would he put a map of Qumran on there, for one thing? And then why would he put it upside down? Well, it wasn't Qumran.
It wasn't that.
Yeah, what happened
was it accurate, though?
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, it was accurate. It was accurate, as good as guys at that time could make it.
Jim, the book of Revelations was written by someone called John. They believe it was Apostle John. They're not sure, but was that included in the Dead Sea Scrolls as well? I think it was.
No, I don't believe they found any New Testament books in them. Now, but know this: there are books that have been taken out of the Dead Sea Scroll collection, because there's been a lot of Bedouins and treasure hunters, and that have gone in there and stolen books out of there. And I'm sure that there's books that are missing from the collection. And if anybody wanted to hide something, that would probably be one of the ones they wanted to hide, because that's a pretty big money-making location.
Yeah,
Qumran is a big tourist place. So they would not want to ruin their income from that. But
Well,
is there a possibility? I believe yes, there is a very good possibility.
tell us about the Copper Scroll Project.
Oh, that's been an absolute blessing. I got involved with it. I ran into a guy by the name of Vendel Jones.
We knew him.
Did you?
He was like the modern day Indiana Jones.
That's what he believed. He was a character. I spent a couple of weekends with him.
He passed away, didn't he?
He did a few years ago, about the time I saw and talked to you last.
Yes, exactly.
He passed away. He was a good guy. Our research was very different. All of the items from the Copper Scroll, I've identified all but one of 57 locations. All but one, I can't find it at Qumran. I don't know exactly where it's in the ruins somewhere, but I just can't tell you where. But the Copper Scroll, it's literally a metal document made of copper to last at least a couple thousand years. And they wanted that document to be able to point whoever discovered, whoever understood, learned to understand it, to be able to find all these locations. And in particular, there's a cave about 340, 380 yards from Qumran to the northwest. They wanted that spot in particular to be found because it's got the mother lode of, if you ever seen the movie National Treasure.
Oh, yeah, with Nicolas Cage.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Well, you want to talk about some amazing treasures. That's what very well could be inside of that cave. There's documents, Emek Hamelech, which means belly of the king, Second Maccabees, and one other one. It's a marble tablet, the Ezekiel tablets. The last two tell the same story as the Emek Hamelech, the belly of the king scroll, but they tell about the Copper Scroll. They call it a copper document, and they tell about just incredible amounts of gold and silver that are hidden inside of a cave. And they describe the cave. The Copper Scroll describes the location that we found to a T. And it's here's the Indiana Jones part of it. Locations 1, 2, and 3, with 3 being the cave, are in a straight line. Locations 53 through 57, with 57 being the cave, are in a straight line. And they come to a V right over the spot that we've selected or determined to be the location for the cave. Now, if I'm right about that one, the possibility of some of the most amazing religious artifacts and scrolls, that's what I'm interested in. There's going to be massive amounts of scrolls in there. And if you think the Dead Sea Scroll collection is going to be amazing, the collection of scrolls that they'll have inside of that cave, because they are planning, that's what the whole thing was set up for, a rabbi told me in Israel, he said, Jim, he said, when you get these things out of the ground, do you realize what it is? And I said, well, yeah, they're treasures. He said, no. This is the dowry for the coming bride of the Messiah. And I thought, oh, my gosh, that makes so much sense, because everything that they need to set things back in motion, to include the tabernacle of Moses, will be inside of that cave, if I'm right.
Has anybody explored the cave yet?
No. Here's the thing. On the Copper Scroll and in the story about Second Maccabees, what they did is Jeremiah and his teams put all this gold, silver, the artifacts from the Temple of Solomon, not Herod, King Solomon. They put all these artifacts inside of a cave. Then they took plaster and mortar, because those guys were masons. They smeared this stuff on there and covered and sealed that wall shut. Because if you're going to put something inside of a cave, Qumran's the place to do it. That is one of if not the driest place on earth, it is one of the driest places.
Might they be King Solomon's treasure?
Absolutely. The items that are buried inside of that cave are King Solomon's treasure. There's no doubt about it. If I'm right, and those things still exist in there, but here's what I know. There was a deputy speaker of the Knesset. His name is Moshe Feiglin. He was angry that the Israelis, the government, didn't do any more research on what I had found, because he's seen my research, and he absolutely believes I'm correct. He went out there with me, and we scanned it with a very powerful metal detector, and we scanned that cave. And, George, there is just, it's like in stacks. We scanned a small area, but there were like 5 stacks of non-ferrous metals in one row and another 5 to 6 stacks in another row. So that was just incredible. And we have a good, strong evidence that these items are still there.
Now, we were talking about the cave, which is protected by Israel. Is the cave in the West Bank as well?
Yeah, it is. The cave, all of it, Qumran, everything's in the West Bank. This portion of it, of the West Bank, is controlled by the Israelis. And because of the Dead Sea Scrolls, and now possibly because of what I've discovered there, they're going to make sure that they hang on to that area. Matter of fact, when Trump did he was trying to get the Jordan Valley. That was it. That included, and it went right down and made sure to include Qumran, and probably because they know that it's so important for the Dead Sea Scrolls. But it was included in that as well.
It's remarkable. In terms of the Copper Scroll project, how did you find out about it?
About the Copper Scroll?
Yeah.
I'd gone to see Vendel. I had some other research that I was doing on the chronology, biblical chronology from the Dead Sea Scrolls. And I was invited to his home and sat down with him, and he was telling me about the Copper Scroll.
So he knew about it?
Oh, Vendel, yeah. He was the Copper Scroll guy of the day. Again, I didn't agree with his research, but his information on the Copper Scroll, about Jeremiah, about the prophets, about how many writers, I got to give him credit for that. The research of all the information or the items being in Qumran, that was my research. But yeah, Vendel's the one that got me interested, because I wasn't interested in the Copper Scroll at all, because it was just a kosher list of gold and silver, and it really didn't interest me until I realized, oh my gosh, these are prophets. All this stuff that's in there is for the coming of the Messiah.
Did they have a date about that coming of the Messiah?
Did they have a date? What they say is when these things are found, when the items of the Copper Scroll are found, it would be the time of the coming of the Messiah and the time of the restoration of the tribes of Israel. So as far as a date, that's as close as you're going to get, other than this. Every Sabbath, every seventh day, the Jewish people celebrate Sabbath. Well, they do that in remembrance of, to remind them of, that for one thing, the Sabbath is a wedding ring to a Jewish person. That's their sign that they're related. They're related to God, intensely related to God. But that Sabbath also represents the 1,000-year millennial reign of the Messiah. And George, we are at the end of the sixth day, and based on the chronology research, everybody knows it. We are at the end of the sixth day, and if I'm right about the Copper Scroll items, that's what's happened. Is I've identified where these locations are at, and now if we start pulling them out of the ground, look up, because the time has come.
Sooner than later, Jim, isn't it?
I think so. I absolutely believe it's going to be sooner than later. And that's why I'm so eager to get back over to Israel.
Was the Copper Scroll tossed in with the Dead Sea Scrolls, or is that separate?
Yeah, it was with the Dead Sea Scrolls. K3 is about where they found the Copper Scroll. It's about a mile from Qumran to the north. And what the prophets did with it is they took it in there, they rolled it up after they got it all written and riveted together. They rolled it up, it snapped in two, and then they had two rolls instead of just one. But they hid them on a shelf, a dirt shelf inside of Cave 3, and they left them there. Well, nature pulled a little trick on them. The ceiling collapsed, probably during one of the earthquakes. It collapsed and formed a false wall between the entrance and the copper scroll. Well, luckily they found it on the last day of an excavation they were doing. They found it, and they pulled it out and realized what they had found was a treasure map.
Do the Dead Sea Scrolls say anything that scares you?
That scares me? No. There is nothing that scares me. There's what we call a term of endearment. What it says is there are seven groupings of Greek letters, and those seven groupings give you actually spell out a sentence. It says, in the wilderness, the hand of the priest will give drink to the spirit of grace in the sixth age. Well, the sixth age is coming to an end. And that term is the same ones that are in Isaiah and Jeremiah. They talk about the priest giving a drink in the wilderness. And what they're saying is it's the time of the wedding. It's the time of restoring of Israel. Even there's a scroll called the Melchizedek scroll. And it gives the date of the crucifixion of Jesus. It gives the exact year. It gives the exact biblical holiday, which is a year of Jubilee. And it was all done on the Day of Atonement. At the same time they were doing the goat thing. That's what was happening there. And as a matter of fact, whenever Jesus got up to read in the synagogue and they tried to throw him off a cliff, that was the exact same year that scroll's talking about, with the coming of the Messiah or the priest, and it was a Melchizedek priest. So, yeah, there's a term of endearment but it's something to give us hope.
Jim, where are the scrolls now? Are they in Jordan?
No, the copper scroll is. They got it in a special case in the Amman, Jordan Museum. The Dead Sea Scrolls, the majority of them now are in Israel at the Shrine of the Book.
Are you going to go back when they go into the cave?
Are you kidding? You betcha I'm going to go.
They can't keep you away, huh?
Oh, no. You know what I put in? It's been 14 years, 15 years now that I've been working on this. I've been to Israel 17 times, and I'm vested in this. I don't care about the money, about the gold and silver. I told my buddies, the guys that have been with me this whole time, we got a spot right outside that cave, and there's a little mound. We're going to sit on that mound and watch the priests bring all those items out of there, and that's going to be our reward for this.
What do you think it's worth? Just guess.
Well, let me give you one location. One location has 900 talents of pure gold. 900 talents. A talent is 75 pounds. That is almost $2 billion worth of gold in one location.
Wow.
Yeah, and there's silver. There's one location, we identified it with these metal detector we used. It's about 60 feet long, and it's got just, it looks like, the way I understand it, they're like ingots, round ingots that were stacked in there. And it's, 6 feet long, probably about 4 feet wide, the best I can guess. So who knows how much silver's there? They set it up. Some of the, I think there's a message, and it sounds silly, but I think there's a message in how many ingots they would put in each of the locations. For example, there's 40 ingots at the double entry mikvah. There's 390 ingots, or not ingots, but talents of golden vessels torn and ripped to pieces. Those were, I believe, absolutely believe, those are the ones that Nebuchadnezzar cut to pieces in the story of, I believe, the Second Kings. Tells about some golden items being chopped up, and the government of Babylon actually gave them to Jeremiah as a gift, because Jeremiah was telling all the Israelis, don't pass go, grab your stuff and get to Babylon. You're going to go into exile for 70 years. He had been warning them about this, and he told them, just go. You're going to die if you fight. Just go. So I think there's a story or a message in how many ingots are out there. And George Ayers is just incredible literally tons of gold and silver out there.
Why did the Qumran prophets bury the treasures? Why were they trying to hide them?
Well, the Babylonians in the first year of Nebuchadnezzar's men attacked Qumran. And that's why they hid all the stuff
including the scrolls.
Yeah, they hid everything. They left everything. The scrolls were already there because they were already retired scrolls inside of the caves. But they put all the gold and silver in the ground after that, because there's a big building there. It's a really big building. The walls are like 20 feet thick, and it's really deep chambers in it, and it's hard to get in because it's got one small door. But I bet it was packed full of gold and silver at the time of the attack, and they fought. And the priests, the men at Qumran won the battle. But they lost a lot of men, and they had enough men to bury the treasures after that. But that's what happened with it, and why they buried it is they didn't want to take it any further than they had to. They just buried it right there within the ruins, and apparently it worked. Nobody's found them until now.
Why do you think it's taken so long to uncover them?
Are you asking why the Israelis haven't done anything about it?
Yeah.
Netanyahu said one time, and I hope I quote him right, he said, the Temple Mount is like an atomic bomb, but the Ark of the Covenant is like a button. In other words, they are afraid of these things. I sat down with the guy that was Director General, Hanania Hizmi, of all of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. I gave him a presentation of my research. And at first the guy was just like everybody else. They thought I was a nut until he saw the research. Then he was trying to keep a poker face, but the guy better never go to Las Vegas because he'll lose his butt. He was just excited about it. But then whenever I got done, he said, Mr. Barfield, sometimes it's best just to leave things alone. And I said, what do you mean? He said, it's just best to leave things alone. And then a guy by the name of Orrin Gutfield was going to work with me as an archaeologist. He said, no problem. He said, I can get a permit. We can go out there. We can do whatever. He was wrong, because Hanania Hizmi closed Qumran to excavation within the ruins. He closed it the next day after he talked to me.
Wow. Now, of course, you don't speak or read Hebrew, but you've been able to decipher. So how did you do this?
It was honestly very simple. What I did is I've been studying the Dead Sea Scrolls since 1995, I believe. And I knew all the ancient Hebrew script. I knew it very well. And then whenever I got a copy of the Copper Scroll, what I did is I just would find a word, go to the concordance, the Strong's Concordance, and look up the word in the concordance, find the meaning, and I'd plug it in. Then I go to the next word, and the next word, and the next word. And it worked incredibly well. The guys that have seen my research, especially the archaeologists and the rabbis just loved it. I met with the Sanhedrin, and they were beside themselves. But that's how I did it. I just simply took the concordance and used it and filled in the blanks. And listen to this. The Copper Scroll you can definitely see the handwriting styles for those guys. There's 5 men that wrote it, and 2 of those guys were definitely people that you know from the Bible. It was Haggai and Zechariah. So when you look at the writing from the Copper Scroll, oh my goodness, you're looking at the handwriting of those 2 men. They were boys at the time they wrote it, but they were, of course, they grew up and came back to Qumran, and they were older men by the time they got back. They were probably in their 80s by the time they got back. But yes, those kind of things do happen.
When they deciphered the Dead Sea Scrolls, how long did it take them, Jim?
It took a long time, mainly because there was a lot of, in the archaeological world and the history world over there, it's a cat and mouse game over there. Those guys are vicious. They're very protective of their territory. The guys that were translating the scrolls took forever. It wasn't from 1947 when they found the scrolls until they actually let them loose for examination was 1991, and they still didn't have them all translated. It's just a quagmire of academic jealousy, and because everybody wants to have their name on this stuff, so that's why it's taken so darn long.
I'd like to know who the person is who dictated the stories to them. That's the story. What do you think?
The scrolls of the prophets. You can tell who did that. Jeremiah dictated to Baruch, and Isaiah dictated to his scribe, and so on. So they are the ones that told the prophetic stories. Now, the kings, they had scribes in the temple and that worked for the king that wrote down and jotted down all that information. It's kind of like with our presidents. They've got presidential libraries. They got all that stuff recorded. So there were men that were trained and set up to do that kind of thing.
Where do you think the Ark of the Covenant might be?
I really believe it's in the cave that we've been talking about, because Second Maccabees and Melech and the other books that I've named, they all say that it's in a buried cave, described just like I've been telling you. It's so the probability that it's in the cave, I think, is very high. But let me tell you this: I don't care who finds it, just so long as it's found. Whoever, there was another gentleman, Ron Wyatt. He said he found underneath a Temple Mount. If he's right, then that's wonderful. I think that'd be fantastic.
He's the one who thinks he found Noah's Ark as well, isn't he?
Yes, a couple of things he's done, like the Noah's Ark thing and the Red Sea crossing. Very, very interesting information that he's got on there.
The little shepherd boy, the Essene, who found the Dead Sea Scrolls, what was he doing in the cave? Just wandering around?
No, he was chasing a goat. He was a little shepherd boy. He wasn't an Essene. He was a little shepherd boy of Bedouin, I believe. And he was throwing rocks and threw a rock down inside of the cave 4, I believe. And he hit one of the jars and broke it. And he thought, wow, what in the world is in there? And, of course, they're always looking for antiquities because they can make money off of them. So he went into the cave, and that's how he wound up with the first few scrolls.
How many years do you think the scrolls were in the cave before they were discovered in 1946-47?
Oh, I can almost tell you to the year. It's from 70 A.D. Until 1947.
Wow.
So
a long time.
It's a long time they were in there.
That is amazing. That nobody else would go in. How far into the cave were they, Jim?
The way that Cave 4 is, you almost have to go in from the top. It's like a plateau right next to the plateau that Qumran building sit on.
You got to lower yourself into a hole or something?
Yep, you do. You got to lower yourself into a hole, and that's where a lot of them went. Now, the other scrolls, the other caves are just like regular caves. Like Cave 3 where the Copper Scroll was found. You can walk right into it, and there's a pretty big space in there.
Jim, I want you to give out your website, would you, sir?
It's just the Copper Scroll Project, all one word, .com. And that's how you'll find it. We're updating it, and we're underway right now. We're going to have some more information on there within the next few weeks.
If you get more information about the treasure, when do you think that hunt will be taken underway?
I think with the conditions, the way things are, and the gentleman saying this is getting close to the end times, if it's true, and I believe it is, I think it will be within the next 3 years.
Will you update us when you get out there?
I would love to.
All right, great. Thanks, Jim. Always good having you on the program.
Thank you, sir.
Jim Barfield, the Copper Scroll Project, finding the treasures of the tabernacle. This would be amazing to find the treasures of King Solomon that he says is worth billions and billions of dollars. The Coast mobile app is now available for download on iPhones and Android devices. You can become an insider directly through this app. This is a great option for our international listeners, and new users will also receive a free 2-week trial.